Welcome everybody to Heavy Potty's Heavy Cast. This is our fourth episode with me, Noyan, and Eden, and this week we have two very special guests, Myles and Rob from Native Construct. Hi guys.
Hey.
Hello.
Native Construct is a progressive metal band for those of you who haven't heard of it, and it's, I think, one of the best albums of this year, their album Quiet World. And Myles is the guitar player and Rob is the singer, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Let's, I guess, dive straight into it and hear what you guys did with your weeks. So you said you listened to our episodes of our podcast, so we know, you know that we kind of do this thing where we talk about what we've done with our week musically. So what have you guys done with your week?
Unfortunately for me, I haven't been able to listen to any music for pleasure this week. We're leaving for tour tomorrow morning, actually, so it's been jam-packed with rehearsals and preparation. So musically, it's been just Native Construct stuff, which kind of sucks, but that's what we're up to.
Yeah. I think, what have we done? We're filming playthrough videos.
Oh, nice.
Like every day. This week, yeah, we've gotten busy with that. And bass and guitar stuff on that, and then doing rehearsals for tour. Setting
Max
up.
and Bohawk are actually in the other room right now shooting a video.
Our living room is currently a film studio for playthrough videos.
So we can be excited for more videos, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Very soon.
Great.
Heavy blog exclusive. More videos coming.
Hey, come on, man. Don't be... Well, anyway. So...
That's how it works.
So... I guess we'll briefly touch up on what we did this week because there was a little bit, and maybe you guys can chime in on this as well. So, Obscura released the teaser for their new album this week. I think it's going to be their fourth studio album. Are you guys fans of Obscura?
I haven't heard them much.
I have not.
Oh, they're this German technical death metal, progressive death metal band.
Yeah, I recognize the name.
And they're all I believe music students like yourselves as well, I believe, from Germany's something college that I don't remember the name of. Anyway, the album is the teaser, from what it sounds like, it's really neat. It's got this old school kind of cynic-y sound to it and the band's regular sound, so I'm really excited for that.
And this comes in the wake of some of their members moving and forming Alkaloid, which is something Noyan spoke about, and like they took their more experimental sound and recorded the Malkuth Grimoire this year, so it looks like Obscura is reverting back to their old school death metal sound, which is great.
Yeah.
Like classic Cynic, like you were saying.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty sick.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's cynic, but a bit more heavier with some other like old school death metal elements. It's pretty nice, I think.
All right.
And Eden wanted to talk about another project as well, kind of related to Cynic, actually.
Yeah, it is related to Cynic. It's called Our Oceans, and it features Timon, who was on Cynic, and a lot of other players from Exvius. And I didn't really know what to expect from this album, because you have all these very technical players on it. And it kind of sounds like Aeon Spoke, which is another Cynic side project. So it's like this acoustic rock thing. And it's very interesting because Paul and Sean, obviously in the wake of the very media-covered Cynic Fallout or whatever, Aeon Spoke is, I guess it's dead as well. But suddenly this project comes along and it sounds almost the same. I mean, if someone told me this was another Aeon Spoke album, I wouldn't be surprised. So it's kind of interesting to maybe speculate about common influences, a common core of sound that kind of survives even after the main band has passed away, which is very interesting to me.
There's some vocoder stuff on your album, so are you guys fans of Cynic?
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Cynic has been in my top 5 for many years now. I discovered them in early high school, which for me was gotta be like 8 years ago. Something like that, and they've still been in that top tier of bands for me ever since.
Yeah,
So
and since Myles and I have essentially the same musical development since high school, it's the same for me.
So Focus or Tres Dinero?
Trace and Air for me because Focus was before my time.
Yeah.
So I'm not a person who listened to Focus for a long time and then was disappointed when Trace and Air came out. I kind of caught them at the Trace and Air era, so that one speaks to me the most, I think.
I was a fan of Focus for the longest time, and when Trace and Air came out, I was not disappointed. It was different, but not necessarily disappointing. The albums after that kind of disappointed me, but I think Trace and Air is a great album, and saw them live in Turkey back in 2007 with Dream Theater, and they played basically all of Focused and Traced in Air, and it was a great show.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
That's awesome. You don't like Carbon-Based Anatomy?
Well, I never really got into it because
It's not technically an album, I guess, but
yeah, I'm
EP.
sure, but what does? I mean, for me, Cynic. It's not that it's a bad album. It's just that for me, what I expect from Cynic was more of the bizarre, progressive jazz influenced stuff, whereas the Carbon Based was a bit more new agey, I guess.
It was. Well, it. Yeah, I would even say world.
Yeah.
Little worldy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting though.
I
thought that was. I liked the experimentation.
No, I liked it, but it's just that it's not what I was expecting. So it was.
Yeah.
I like it, but I don't like it on the same level, you know.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, and there was one other band I listened to this week. I discovered this random Bandcamp while browsing the upcoming music section of Bandcamp, and there's this band called Cerebric Turmoil, which is apparently some experimental slam grindcore band. And they have these weird jazz breaks and absurd instrumentation, and that's out of nowhere just came out yesterday. So I've been jamming that all night basically. Yeah, I just
So give us a bit
that.
more info, like what bands is this like similar to?
I mean, it's really weird, so it's kind of hard to really say what it's exactly similar to. But if you just take the modern slam sound, I guess, and add some cephalic carnage type of weird stuff, and some, what was that band called? Hunab Ku, I guess. It's like that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Unless anyone else has something to discuss from this week, we can move to the meat of the podcast.
Go ahead.
Sure.
All right, so how I discovered you guys was back in 2011. You guys put out this playthrough video of Chromatic Aberration, and I thought it was really cool back then. And I've been, waiting for something to come out of that stuff for years. And suddenly I hear you guys get signed to Metal Blade, and then you come out with this amazing album. So how did the process from just YouTube video to album on Metal Blade happen? Like how did you guys make those steps? Because it's in this day there's a lot of bands who are in their bedrooms and making this cool music, but not a lot of them get to the level where that music actually becomes a reality for them.
Well, to be honest, I think the YouTube video really had nothing to do with getting signed later.
Huh.
Although we did get, a good deal of exposure from it on Anthony Brown's channel.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we actually got the attention of the label through Tommy Rogers, who we got in contact with through producer Jamie King, who worked on the album with us.
Oh, interesting.
We recorded vocals with him in North Carolina, because Myles and I are from North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
and we knew of Jamie King from BT Bam, just being fanboys and following all their work and stuff. So yeah, we talked to Jamie and he was great. So we decided to work with him and got in touch with Tommy through him. Tommy shopped it around and showed it to Brian Slagle at Metal Blade, and they contacted us, and that's how we got in touch with him.
Oh, that's
Yeah. So it's really Tommy Rogers. We owe like all of this progress to like with the getting signed. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a nice little story.
So was this before the video or after the video?
This was after. This was
Okay.
because when that video was recorded, that was the only thing written.
Mm-hmm.
We wrote the rest of the album much later than Chromatic Aberration.
This band sort of started as just
Yeah.
a couple of dudes in the dorm messing around and making videos for fun. So that's what that first video was. And then later we decided we wanted to get a little more serious about it. So we focused up and wrote a complete album.
And I mean,
From
it's interesting because the album kind of throughout the album, the themes of the song are carried. So was it kind of like you guys expanded that song into a whole album in a sense? How did that?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly it. We took a lot of the themes from that song because it's very dense. There's a lot of
Mhm.
stuff going on in it, so there was plenty to draw from. And we kind of just expanded it out into a full record.
That's actually really interesting because, when I'm always interested in how the thought process of a musician works when they're trying to make this concept album. And, where does the concept start? Does the concept feed into the album, or do they write the music and then retrofit the concept on top of it? So, how was it all about the music and then the stuff came later on, or how was the concept formed, I guess?
For us, it was the concept and the music kind of came up together side by side. So it was really interesting because we didn't really know exactly what the overarching themes of the album lyrically were going to be until pretty far along in the process. We just started somewhere. We didn't really have a sense of direction. We just went ahead and just started making stuff, and then eventually, as we made more and more stuff, we started to see how things could tie together, and we developed a overarching theme and kind of connected it all. So it was really weird. I can't even really tell you exactly where the concept came from. It sort of was just each of us contributing a little bit over time, and it sort of just appeared in front of us eventually.
Has the line... Oh, sorry, Eden, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm interested. I mean, I love the album as well, by the way. And I really like the lyrics, and I love concept albums and like digging into them. So, do any of you study philosophy in any professional capacity, or where did the interest in the themes of Genesis and death and community come from? Is it something just that interests you, or something that you've pursued in more in-depth ways?
Well,
certainly none of us have. Oh, sorry.
I haven't personally studied philosophy or anything like that in school. So, I mean, Myles, you took that one class. Robert
took one philosophy class in college.
Yeah, he took one class with the guy he described as Robert Downey Jr. on acid.
Yeah,
as a professor.
That sounds like a class I'd like to take.
And he said, yeah,
it was great. That was one of my favorite classes of college, for sure.
What was the subject?
It was called Place, Space, Infinity, which is probably the coolest course title of all time, which is why I took it. And it was about it was just a history of philosophy on sort of issues of space and infinity and that kind of thing. But
space
as for the album,
sorry,
what was that?
I was space as in the great unknown, or space as in the dimensions.
The category.
Okay. How the two
that's actually what I research in my MA, so that's interesting to me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a great subject. I wish I could have done more, but I only had the one electives.
So where do these like images and themes come from? Do you like create it in your own mind, or do you draw from other sources?
Well, so we kind of, I mean, we're like fantasy nerds, anyway. So we draw from all kinds of stuff. Like there was definitely a lot of like Tolkien influence in our music from the beginning, at least from us, and also from our former guitarist who was with us when we started the band and co-wrote the album with us, Gabe Solomon.
So yeah,
way into Tolkien. So that was a strong influence. But like we kind of we wanted to create some kind of universe to put these characters in, and they were kind of sub stories and sub worlds within that. And I think the stories were kind of written somewhat separately from each other, because each song on the album, each track is kind of a different story in itself. Different chapter and like the overarching thing. So those were kind of written like separately, and then we connected them through the music and through the overarching theme.
So
I would say
Eden and I are both huge fantasy nerds, so we could talk more fantasy if you guys want.
Oh yeah.
What do you guys? What else do you guys draw from? If there's anything specific.
So, as far as the fantasy stuff, for me specifically, it's the Tolkien and definitely a lot of Star Wars.
I see.
And then as far as the other themes, like the more personal themes, it's sort of just drawn from real life. There's a lot of themes that are rooted in fantasy, but if you sort of take away the layer of fantasy, you can see that it's a regular everyday struggle. And these are things that I think we've all experienced, and things that sort of, even if you're not intending to put them in the music, they will just insert themselves. If you're spending that much time dedicated to one piece of music, there's just no way that your own feelings aren't going to slip in some capacity.
Yeah.
So they sort of just creep in without you even intending to sometimes.
Yeah, so that's actually a subject that Eden and I also occasionally talk about, where does the artist end and where does the music start? And some people think it's a more clear delineation, but we believe that there is no clear line in between, and whatever the artist is feeling, experiencing, it just inherently gets put into their music, as you said. So I definitely agree with that. So you guys, is this going to be your first tour?
Well, this is actually our second actual tour, but this is our first tour on this scale. We had a smaller one that we headlined around the East Coast and into the Midwest for a couple of weeks in August with Outrun the Sunlight and Wings Denied, and that was
That's
awesome.
the one
That was our
sponsored.
first excursion. Yeah,
Yeah, that was fun.
absolutely. So
I
you
was really
guys,
happy to
you
do
knew
that.
about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I know it from like remote control because I'm all over here in Israel, so it's across the ocean. But it
Yeah.
really warmed my heart. I mean, both your band and Outrun the Sunlight, and who was Wings Denied as
Wings
well, right?
Denied.
Yeah, so like 3 bands that I really like. So it was really nice to be able to sponsor that. And how was that
Thank
tour?
you. Yeah, it was fantastic. We had such a great time, and we learned a lot. I mean, that was our first time on the road, and you think you know what to expect, but it's totally different, and there's always going to be new problems and new situations popping up every day. So it's definitely an experience. So that was a really good way to get some experience under our belt before going out with BTBAM.
Yeah. And
it was an awesome. I mean, it was just an awesome tour, and they were really awesome guys.
this tour's lineup looks amazing between the Buried and Me, Enslaved, Intronaut, you guys. And in fact, I think are you guys? Yeah, you're coming to Baltimore at the end of the tour, so I'll probably see you guys.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
So are you guys familiar with Enslaved or Intronaut as well, or?
I'm somewhat familiar with Intronaut. I have not listened to Enslaved nearly enough yet. I know that I've looked at their catalog, and I know they have a lot.
Yeah,
they've been around for a while.
They're an interesting band because they are one of the older black metal bands that over time kind of transitioned into being more progressive metal with a blackened sound.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Their 2012 album Retier is probably among my top 5 favorite all-time albums. It's a really great album.
Excellent.
Yeah, and Intronaut just also recently came out with. Was it this week actually? The new album.
It was, yeah.
I think yeah.
The Direction of
I
Last
still need to
Things.
listen to that too.
It's
because
fantastic.
I've been reading reviews. I haven't picked it up yet.
It's fantastic, and Devin Townsend produced it.
Yeah, I heard about that. That's awesome.
And I
He's
really
fantastic.
like following his production career because he started off a bit shaky. He worked with Lamb of God, and some of his mixes there aren't very popular. But then as time progressed, it's an art form in itself, right? Producing music.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's very interesting to see how he grew as an artist and sort of became familiar with all these new techniques. And the production on this album is pristine.
Yeah, and his own stuff that he produces sounds fantastic as well. He's got his own style and sound just nailed down.
Yeah.
So let me actually play on that and ask you about signature sound, because obviously this album sort of pegged you in a certain scene and a certain sound. And when people, when you release, hopefully, the second album soon, people will expect something from that album. Maybe this neoclassical, progressive sound. So how does that figure into continuing the creative process? Is that something that concerns you? Do you mind? Do you even notice it? Or do you just...
I think that we're always going to sound like Native Construct, no matter what type of composition comes out. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, the style that we fall into or that our music sounds like, because we're not sitting down to write this one type of thing, right? I mean, you could probably hear that from the album. We just write what we want to, and it comes out how it comes out, and the categories come later from third parties. So, we're gonna write what we feel, and it's gonna sound like Native Construct, but it might not be something that you would put in the same category as Quiet World entirely.
I'd just like to add to that. I think sort of what Robert's getting at is the things that will put you into certain categories of genre are not sort of the core thing that defines our sound. I think
Absolutely,
there's certain elements of native construct that are deeper than that, like counterpoint, harmony, rhythm, that kind of thing. And I think that they could be very interchangeable between styles. So we could write an album that was a totally different genre, but it would still sound like us because of those core elements. And as far as the expectations of the audience, we just try not to really even think of that. As Rob said, we kind of just
It is scary.
want to write what we
it is there, but yeah, that's not how we write our music.
Yeah, I'd say it's so scary that I have to actively make sure that I don't think about it. It's difficult to do that, but
Yeah,
I think that's the best way to go about it. Is to
Yeah, I
make
mean, we
yourself
didn't do that with
really pay
Quiet
attention.
World, and we've been honestly really excited and happy that it's been well received by critics and listeners and people that we've performed it for. So we've been lucky and happy about that, but yeah, hopefully that continues. But we're just gonna keep doing what we've been doing, you know.
I can definitely relate to that fear because I also have a solo project where I put out progressive death metal, and I put out an EP a few years back and then an album last year. And all the time I was writing the album, I was always trying to, in my own mind, live up to the standard I set by the EP. And I was like, I write a riff and then I go, this doesn't really fit well with what I established in the EP, but I just keep it anyway. And it's not that I don't it's not that I delete the riffs I write, or I'm like, I'm not gonna make music like this, and I constrain myself. But the fact that I think about it and I try not to think about it is just a really, really oppressive fear, I think.
Yeah, I can certainly relate.
Well, I mean, so you kind of touched upon it, Myles, with the counterpoint stuff, but what is the core of your sound to you guys? What does native construct mean to you? You being not just you, but also Rob, and even the rest of the band, if you can speak for them.
So it's a lot of, to get very specific, I think that one of the core elements of our sound is tonal harmony that's highly chromatic and in a very specific way. It's almost hard to describe. There's certain, when you're composing, you come to certain crossroads every once in a while where you can, there's a certain number of ways you can go harmonically and with the counterpoint, and we have a very certain way of doing it where we try to insert chromaticism as much as possible without destroying the motion of the chord progressions. So it creates a cool, it's almost a retro sound, but at the same time, it's kind of fresh, I think.
That was the most composerist sentence of all time.
And it's something that I really enjoy, and I have many ideas of how to take it further and to develop it more. So I think that that's something that's not ever really going to leave our sound, no matter what style we're putting on top of that core element.
I mean,
and as for me, as far as putting out new music, it's important to me that we never put out the same product twice. And in that way, like, we're not when we're working on music, we want to keep moving in some direction. We want to keep improving ourselves and refining a sound. And it's kind of I think that it should just not get stagnant. I just enjoy bands that continue to take risks and pioneer a new thing and develop their own kind of unique and unclassifiable sound. Bands like Pink Floyd and Queen have done that. The Beatles have done that. Bands that you can't just slap a label on them in any way. Not that that's what I'm afraid of, but that's something that I just admire. I think that that's a huge achievement. So that's kind of the lofty goal that I've set for this band.
Yeah, I mean
That's the
definitely
ideal.
comes through with what you guys are doing, because I mean it's it's easy to just say, hey, progressive metal, whatever. But if you try to specifically explain what you guys are, unless you go down and specifically, like Myles did, explain the music theory breakdown of what you guys do with your songs, then there isn't really an easy classification for what you guys are doing, I think. On that note, I
would
always
agree.
wanted to, sorry, I'm interrupting you. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm sorry. I was just saying I agree. Thank you.
On that note, I've always wanted to ask you guys, like, you said that Chromatic Aberration was just written as a thing and then that later developed into the album. And is the name of the song just because of the, chromaticity of the song?
It's I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a pun, but I mean it's it's dumb. The reason I originally came up with that. No, yeah, I was like, oh, it's like I think the song is like when I started writing the lyrics, I was like, what? Because I was just sent some audio files of demos of it when it was being written. We were doing it remotely. We were writing it remotely. This was before I got to Berkeley. Myles was there. Playing with these guys that eventually joined the band with me. I did my freshman year of college at a state school in North Carolina and then transferred to Berkeley my next year. So I was doing it remotely and he would send me the files and I was thinking about like, all right, what does this music make me think of? And it was colorful and really like, and he used a lot of different colors and I like that. And then I came up with themes that represented color and then also just and then the title became essentially like a double entendre, like chromatic music and also it's about color. So yeah.
So what is
keep it light, keep it silly.
So what is for everybody I think has some album where they've listened to it and they've gone, man, people can do this with music, and then that's kind of expanded their horizons. For me, I mean, I've had several phases in my life, but for me, the real phase where I kind of really opened up was Nevermore's This Godless Endeavor, where I was like, these guys make these really long songs that are fast and, technical and interesting. And, after that, the way I viewed music kind of changed. So do you guys have albums like that kind of you think set yourselves on a path?
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, I think for Myles as well, for both of us, it was probably Colors from BT.
Oh yeah, Colors is great.
Yeah.
In 2007, that was like the one album. I know that was the defining album for me, where I was like, oh, this I've never heard anything like this before, and prog metal exists, and that kind of set me down that path of getting really into prog metal. I think that we were both in 9th grade. We were like 14.
Colors was it like 2000?
I think it was 2007.
Yeah. That album.
Yeah, that was definitely my album.
I think that album definitely set some ripples on the scene that we still see the effects of, including you guys. I mean.
Yeah, I mean we're certainly very influenced by it. Yeah.
Is it your favorite BT Bam album?
It's hard for me to pick a favorite. I mean, yeah, those were certainly the glory days for me. I was such a fanboy. Not that I am not still. I mean, I'm still going to be a fanboy while we're on tour with them, of course. but like, yeah, I mean, Colors is always going to be a standout, at least because of the nostalgia factor. I mean,
yeah, I think I'd say the same easily. Though I think my favorite song is probably Misdirection from the Great not Obfuscation from the Great
Obfuscation. Yeah, that was another one of my favorites.
Yeah, I have a thing for really long songs that go across this journey and wonder why I like you guys. So it's also interesting that you guys you mentioned Queen, and I feel like the new Between the Buried and Me album. Have you guys had a chance to check it out?
Oh yeah.
That also has gone in a different direction and more Queenie, more opera-y, I guess.
Well, yeah, it's much more of a rock opera.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they've been doing that with the Parallax, but with this new album, it's very much more intentionally rock opera-y, I would say.
And in fact, it kind of reminds me of you guys' album. I don't know which one came out first, but like it's interesting that it kind of converges at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned that you don't have a lot of time to catch up with up-to-date music. So do you even see yourself as part of a community, a scene? Is it something that you're thrown into, or do you feel like you're actually part of a movement maybe?
I certainly feel community with the musicians that we've performed with already, and I, in that sense, but musically, we're not really trying to be any one thing, So we're not really looking to fit into a community or anything musically. But if that happens, as it kind of does on its own, that's awesome.
I think Eden meant more in a sense as a listener. Am I right?
Oh,
Eden?
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I meant, I mean,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that, no, it's fine. I think that a lot of times us, double, triple air quotes, music journalists, bloggers, fans, we sort of enforce these narratives on the music that we listen to. We listen to Quiet World, and we listen to the new Between the Buried and Me, and we listen to other progressive stuff, and we call it the progressive metal scene.
Right.
And it's interesting to me to find out how much that actually exists on the surface, or are we just reading these stories into these albums?
Honestly, for us, progressive metal has been a scene that we've been very much a part of for many years now. As Rob said, ever since discovering Colors, we sort of went down the prog rabbit hole, and we were very into it and part of the community for a long time. We attended prog rock festivals, and we're all over the internet listening to new bands and on the prog archives and stuff. Honestly, though, for me at least, since I started college, I've been very preoccupied with other music of all sorts, because obviously in college there's no prog metal major, so we're having at least not at our school. We're having to spend all of our time studying all these different kinds of music, and honestly it was extremely enriching, and ever since I've been sort of all over the place and haven't been so much focused in the prog community as much.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. You really get forced into studying all these different types of music that I had never personally understood before. I mean, before I got to Berkeley, I had no idea what the hell was going on with jazz. I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know how to listen to jazz. I didn't know how to understand it. And they force it upon you at Berkeley, which a lot of people don't really enjoy. But I really just learned to appreciate all this stuff that I had never been able to understand before, I guess.
So that's actually an interesting conundrum to me, where this music exists, and in this case you mentioned jazz, that is not necessarily designed to be appreciable by a casual listener. You need to have some sort of either preparation or some sort of mentality to get into. So how do you think this, as a musician, how do you feel about such music, and how do you try to make your music more appreciable, or is it something that just naturally comes, or do you even try to make your music more complex so that there's something there for people to latch onto? I mean, the question is kind of a muddled question, but you can take it however you want it.
Well, I mean, it's a sense of the value of the music versus the market value of the music, right?
Yeah.
And balancing that is difficult. I mean, jazz is a little bit more of an outsider because it's it is the result of a long string of progression from earlier types of music that were earlier types of popular music, right? So, I mean, and that progressive metal is honestly in a lot of ways similar. It's the result of a long line of this progression of music, and now we call it progressive metal because we're so progressive. So yeah, and there, but yeah, it doesn't necessarily have any bearing on the market value or the ability of someone to relate to it has to come from the quality of the work, I think, and it just has to be relevant some way.
But so a more specific question is, as the conundrum you place between market value of the music and value of the music, however you define that, and that obviously depends on.
It's very hard to define.
But So there's a lot of music that is designed not to be enjoyable, designed to be abrasive, like bands like Portal, for example, or even not even metal, but stuff like free jazz or what have you. So how would you go about converting a listener into some music like this?
Well, I think the thing is you have to, as a composer and a maker of music, you have to sort of figure out for yourself what you're looking for from your listeners and what kind of listeners you want to attract. So, I mean, I think that it's not really feasible to say, okay, I want to get the entire world to listen to free jazz with my next album, and I'm going to present it in such a way that the entire world appreciates free jazz. You kind of just have to, at the end of the day, say, okay, am I going to make a free jazz album and accept the fact that most people are not going to enjoy it and most people are not going to listen to the entire thing, or am I going to specifically cater to a specific audience and make something for them? And for us, at least, it's sort of honestly a mixture of both, because we want to write things that we want to write, but at the same time, we want to communicate with a lot of people. And so for us, the struggle has always been finding a way to get these ideas that we want to put out into our music in a form that will be acceptable by a decent number of people, so that we're not just writing music for just to play for ourselves in our room and have no one ever hear,
Yeah,
that kind of defeats the purpose for us.
Definitely understand that. But I think one thing that some musicians do is that they prime their listeners over their career. You start with an album, but later in your future music, you can kind of develop the more weird aspects that maybe people wouldn't latch onto if your first album was just flat out free jazz. But over the time, if you dial up the take it up a notch every time a little bit,
dial up the weird,
and then you get there, and then that could that could be the way, because once you have an audience, and then that audience starts to come to you for a certain thing, and you slowly introduce them to other things as well, then there you go. 5 albums later, Native Construct is just going to be free jazz.
It's an effective technique. I mean, we use that technique all the time on a smaller scale within a specific piece. If you want to get to a certain place that's very different from when you started, you can prepare it little by little and sort of hint at it and get closer and closer to it, instead of just switching abruptly all of a sudden with no preparation. That's not as effective, and you'll lose the attention of a lot of listeners by doing that. So it's the same thing on a larger scale.
Yeah, and actually, that is, you mentioned that the abrupt transition versus the lead up. Do you think that the abrupt I feel like the abrupt transition also has a place sometimes where you want to just immediately throw the listener into a thing.
Sure.
So throughout the album, you carry these things, but I think one song is supposed to be independent slightly of the concept.
There's track 4 is sort of a prologue to the concept, because it sort of steps back in time before the first track chronologically, but it's still very much part of the concept.
So why is it the fourth it's a prologue, but it's not in the beginning of the album? Is there any sort of reasoning for that?
So we wanted to set up the story with a little bit of ambiguity at first. The first track opens with this character he's destroyed, and he's starting from nothing, and he has to build his own world from this rock bottom point for him. And so it leaves you wondering, how did he get there? And we sort of explain the premise a little bit and then show you how he got there a little bit later. I think it makes it a little bit more interesting that way.
Yeah, that's definitely a cool storytelling technique.
Yeah, if you were gonna put like a device to it, it's just kind of like a flashback in the story. Yeah,
that makes sense. So if you made future albums, I mean, obviously, are you guys even thinking about more music, or are you just not even thinking about it right now?
I think about it every day.
Yeah.
I have you would think I was absolutely insane if you saw the notes I have written to myself on the subject. I'm constantly recording my thoughts and ideas on this, and just making sure I don't lose anything, because I constantly have things cropping up, and if I don't get them down immediately, I will forget. So I have mountains and mountains of unintelligible notes that I'll have to go through and edit and embellish when the time comes to focus on writing more entirely.
Do you write in sheet music?
Sheet music or notation software on the computer.
Yeah. What software do you use? Just out of curiosity.
A lot of Guitar Pro 5.
Okay, yeah, same.
And Sibelius if I'm using more orchestral instruments.
Myles is a diehard Guitar Pro 5 kid.
Yeah, same. I'm not a fan of 6 at all. It's just unusable to me.
I agree.
And I also have this folder that is approximately like 30 guitar profiles. Some of them are like 2 bars, and then that's it. And then I just when I want to write a song, I just pull up everything from the separate things and just put them together, and over the time it just builds into a song, I guess.
That's exactly what we have done many times. I mean, sometimes just for fun, like we'll go through Myles's old Guitar Pros folders, just like listen to things from years and years ago. That's been like an activity that we've had like many a night over the past several years.
And does that create a spark for some new creativity?
I mean, it's mostly just to laugh at shitty stuff, but sometimes, sometimes we'll look back at it and like, oh, that's okay.
What kind of shitty stuff are we talking here?
Well, I mean, just bedroom riffs. Myles can tell you he's been.
So it would be a lot of really bad metalcore,
yeah,
hardcore type things, and then some goofy joke things. I had a friend of mine named Dylan from back in high school. We used to get together and write music for fun all the time, and we ended up mostly doing joke music where we would just write stuff that sounded ridiculous and humorous just for fun. So there's a lot of that stuff.
You should
it's a lot of fun to look back on.
You should create a project under a different name, an anonymous name, and put out all the garbage music you have.
Oh,
yeah, that's actually been something we've been thinking about a little bit.
That's the dream.
What if that project becomes bigger than Native Construct?
That's the other dream. Yeah, that's ideal.
So if I can jump in here and maybe backtrack a bit, you spoke a lot about we spoke about community, and you kept mentioning the listener and accessibility and stuff like that. So do you feel, because you're kind of a hybrid band, on one end you exist on the internet, and we talked about playthrough videos, but you're signed to a big label and it happened through real life, air quotes, contacts.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you're closer to the listener? Do you feel that there's more communication with the people who consume your music because of the internet? Or is it still, backstage or before show or stuff like that?
Well, we haven't had a lot of touring experience yet. So, I mean, on the road, we've gotten a lot of great feedback, but we haven't reached nearly as many people in real life yet as we have on the internet, just because we've only done one run so far. So there's no way that it's going to...
And on the internet, like, is the communication meaningful? Do you feel like you get a real view into your listeners, or is it sort of surface and unusable in ways?
No, I mean, if anything, I think people are more honest on the internet because they don't have to look at your face while they're saying things. So we get the bad feedback and the good feedback, and I think that it's in a way much more honest than real life, because people very rarely come up to you and tell you what they really think of your music in real life. They'll probably only approach you if they have only good things to say, for the most part.
Yeah, but I would say we had a great opportunity to connect with fans and other musicians at Prague Power USA back in August. That was an awesome performance.
What was the lineup
really
like?
Awesome opportunity. Well, we were on the night with we went on first, and then that night, help me remember, Myles, there was Anger was headlining. Yeah, Anathema. Anger headlined.
Eden's dying right now.
Yeah, and that's the weekly quota. We mention Anathema every episode because I was challenged to do so.
Oh, it was awesome. See, I didn't get to catch all of the sets, but Anathema and Anger were incredible. Anathema, I mean, I'd been wanting to see them live for years.
Same. Yeah, I love them.
And they're incredible. And then, there were awesome parties every night after, because it's a festival. It's like a festival experience.
Yeah.
in Atlanta, and so there were parties, and I got to hang out with Jamie, the bassist from Anathema,
Oh God.
on Saturday night. Yeah, and like I got to talk to him, and he gave us all this awesome advice about being in a band. Yeah, it was like a dream come true. It was so cool.
Definitely. And he's a real pro, right? He's been around for a long time.
Yeah, he's definitely. I mean, he's got some insight.
Yeah.
For sure by now.
How,
He's an awesome dude.
how do you feel like, I mean, because a lot of these older bands, they kind of, the old way to become a big touring band was you would get together and jam with your mates in a garage and then, play some local shows and somehow get noticed by a label, and, you have this local scene and then you slowly grow your local scene. But I feel like the progression for you guys is kind of different because of how you got, Tommy Rogers noticed you guys, and then you guys had this big internet following already, kind of, and those two converged, and then you guys are now on this tour already. So how do you feel like this, the landscape is changing for bands who are in the very early stages of their growth like this? Because I mean, you've spoken, as you said, with these bands, and I'm sure they have very interesting, different experiences.
Well, it's weird because it's easier in the sense that you don't necessarily have to do all the grinding out of the terrible shows for a long time before you get any exposure. For us, I feel like we were very fortunate. We got to bypass a lot of that and have gotten amazing opportunities without really having put in that work. But on the other hand, it's a very oversaturated market now, of course, because anyone can put music up on the internet. So, I can only speak from my own experience, which is that it seems like it's been beneficial, but I'm sure it's also, if you're not lucky, it's very difficult to get noticed on the internet because there's so much stuff out there. So I don't know. I don't really. I mean, this is our first time doing this, so we don't really have anything else to compare it to. But I feel very fortunate for the way it's worked out for us.
Do you think Oh, sorry. Were you going to say something, Rob?
Well, no, I was going to say that it's not that we didn't put this work in. We just kind of
It's a different kind
did
of
it
work.
elsewhere. Yeah, I mean, we spent 4 years writing and getting this album out.
And it shows, I think. It's a very...
And while we were at school, and so we focused on this thing, and we're just... I mean, we didn't have time to perform live. We didn't have the capability to put the time and resources into that. So we were kind of doing our own thing in our own way, and without the time to do the live performance. Now that we're performing live and everything, we're getting this it's totally new experience for us.
I was trying to allude to that there are these bands nowadays that, Periphery, for example, started as a bedroom thing, and then right off the bat they started doing big shows, and Intervals was also a bedroom project that grew very fast. And I feel like the landscape might be changing, or at least maybe the old, as Myles calls it, grinding out local shows thing is, maybe it's not irrelevant, but there's actually at least another option right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, maybe you don't know this, obviously, but do you think there's still room for the bands you're trying to make it the old school way, or is it, going to the future, is it all going to be through digital recognition, for lack of a better term?
I don't really know what I'm talking about, I'll say that up front, but it seems to me like it would be very difficult to sort of build yourself up from nothing the old-fashioned way without taking advantage of the internet at all. Because people don't really, most people don't want to go out and see a show by a band that they aren't interested in already. They want to check you out first on the internet and make sure you're worth the time to go out and spend money and an entire night on seeing. So I mean, I can't say that it's impossible, but it seems to me to be definitely not the best way to go about it, not the most effective or efficient way. And it's expensive to play all of these small shows. You're not making money on this. You have to have some good savings to be able to do that for a long time.
So would you say that this social media and being able to stream music easily, check out bands easily has helped you guys out a lot. Do you guys feel the effect of social media on how you guys became where you are right now? Do you think that people noticing this stuff on social media and sharing around made a difference for you guys?
I think it did. I mean, it's hard to say how much, but I would be very surprised if it hadn't had a big impact. A lot of people, I mean, we've been really happy with the response that we've gotten. Back in the day, there was some like forums where you could find people trashing us from that playthrough video, and that was like Ultimate Guitar Forum posts, and those are hilarious now. I'm glad they exist, but like, I mean, I've been really happy with the response and for the exposure that we've been able to get out of that stuff, because our fans especially are just so passionate about the music that they like. And when they like our music, they're really, I mean, they're really committed to it, and they really care about getting a band that they care about exposure, and they want to share it with someone else so they can have that experience of enjoying it with them. So we've been really lucky with that. Our fans are amazing and very supportive. They're just the kind of people that want to spread music they like around, and I love that.
So where does the
social media is huge for that.
Go. So
social media is just huge for that. That's been huge for us.
So where does the label fit in nowadays? We talked about labels, I think, in every single episode that's been aired so far, but maybe you can give us some insight at what does a label actually do nowadays?
Well, they are kind of a way of getting capital, working capital for the band, if you're going to think of it in a business sense.
Mm-hmm.
So they can help support you in that way, to help you get started. They help you get a lot of exposure that you can't get just from social media alone, or that's hard to get just from social media alone.
So like more traditional ways of exposure?
Yeah, it's a more traditional sense, and we kind of get the, as we were saying before, the kind of the old school music industry support from the label kind of side of things, doing the things that have been going on for years, like the kinds of promotion, like sending, getting us into magazines and those kinds of publications that are not internet based necessarily, and then the social media stuff is kind of our own end of the promotion, the stuff that we can do ourselves. But the label provides a really important, I think, side of that for us. It's definitely very supportive.
And speaking of, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, like, a lot of people have opinions about labels today, saying like, oh, you don't need one, and you shouldn't try to get on one. And I don't think anyone should or shouldn't necessarily. And maybe you don't need one. I mean, people have shown us that you can achieve success, and get your music out without it, obviously on the internet. But it's a resource, certainly.
And speaking of the old school support, the old school music industry style support, another big thing that they do is handle distribution of physical CDs, which is something that's very difficult to do as someone with no money and no professional support,
Yeah.
So I'm kind of getting the sense that it's more than just providing the capital. They also have the weight and sort of the keys to many doors, which might be otherwise hard to open, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can attribute getting, I would say it would be safe to attribute getting our spot on this tour with BTBAM to being on this label with them. I mean, that certainly helped bring us closer to them, and maybe get our music on the radar for them.
Yeah.
Because we were selected by them and some people that were related to that. So it's kind of like it definitely helps in many ways.
So actually, you guys, both in the terms of music you make and then the terms of how you've kind of grown yourselves, are a very modern band. So what do you feel like the response to you has been like from the old school metal community? Because in one of the early episodes, we talked about how sometimes the metal community can be very elitist and gatekeepery, and the people who are into more traditional styles of metal are not necessarily always receptive to changes in the scene. But I feel like your music has enough appeal towards older stuff, like maybe like Dream Theater fans and whatnot, that maybe there is some sort of overlap. Do you guys have any like read on that?
Honestly, I don't really have much insight into the older metal population. I'm sure those people exist. I'm sure there's plenty of people who think that we're
there are Dream Theater fans who enjoy our music for that, I would say.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's also plenty of people who don't want to listen to us because we're not the metal they're accustomed to listening to or whatever.
True metals.
Yeah, but I don't really have any contact with those people, so it's not really something.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. We're like I said, we're doing our own thing. So
yeah, I was just curious to
don't want to set out to appease anyone specifically.
Yeah, I was just curious to see how the old paradigm is interacting with the new paradigm, basically. Mm-hmm. Because there's this thirst for... I've actually, this is a good thing to talk about. I feel like there's this constant thirst for something that is new, that is more over the top, more technical, more progressive. And then the older music is kind of, trying to stay its course and holding tight to its core sound. So how do you feel like... do you feel like this insatiable desire for the new and the more progressive is a good thing? I mean, especially since you guys have the context of music history, right? Because of your education and all.
Yeah.
So how do you feel like this happens, and where does it go?
I think it is a good thing. I think that it happens because it has to happen, because everything in music has to happen. There's been music for thousands of years, and there's like everything has to be explored at some point, whether you think it sounds good or not. Someone's going to write it eventually, and I think that that's all good. I think that everything should be explored. So I think that people should stick to their traditional metal, and that's cool. And then other people should explore as far as they can, and that's also cool. So yeah, I think it's all good.
Everything in music has to happen.
Yeah, eventually. I mean, if you keep music going forever, you're going to get everywhere eventually.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but do you feel like there's a ceiling to that? Because, I mean, mathematically speaking, you have only so many intervals, and even if you go between intervals with like microtonal music, there's only so much difference the human ear can hear, and there's within a given length of time, there's so many notes you can fit. Obviously, there's a very large combination, but of melodies you could write within. Maybe this is too abstract, but
No, I see what you're saying, but music that anyone writes at any time, I mean, essentially, it's literally those notes have been written at some point. And we're coming back to an older thing, an older sound at all the time. I mean, we're doing that in our music all the time. We're studying the older things so that we can draw from those to create this new thing that doesn't sound like other things today, So I think that's in a sense happening with music all the time too. There's just all these older things that are being recycled and turned and pieced together into something else that is new, quote unquote. But if you're thinking in a literal sense, those notes have been written before. Everything has, right?
Yeah, but again, the timbre is going to be different. The instrumentation is going to be different.
Yeah.
There's so many variables that the limit to what can be done is just unfathomably high. So there's no point even really trying to think about when we'll get there, because we'll all be long dead by then.
But it's interesting to think about, like, there's constantly a push for more technical music, and there's always a faster player out there somewhere, and they make this music that is just like 350 BPM sweep picking and tapping and everything. And then you even go past that where bands are making music that's actually not humanly doable with with digital audio workstation editing and whatnot, slowing down and whatever. And do you feel like Okay, so you said that every music that can be made, should be made. But is there a point where you would personally draw a line and say, hey, after this point, there isn't much appeal to me?
Yeah, I mean, personal taste is a totally different story. There's, to take the example you were talking about, super inhumanly technical, shreddy type things are something that I certainly want to have exist, and something that I'd like to hear because I think that would be pretty interesting. But I don't think it's something that I would enjoy listening to regularly. But that's a totally separate issue, I think.
Yeah.
We can figure in the issue of, you mentioned true or authenticity. I mean, your music is obviously very produced, and electronic is a very big part of it. So what do you think about this entire perception of fake sound versus real sound, if it's production, instruments, etc.?
Well, I'm a huge fan of electronic music. Berkeley, in my studies there, my major was electronic production and design, and it got me really into electronic music. And it kind of, like you're saying, like, I mean, all of that music is technically inhuman as well. You know, it can't be performed by a human. It's being created on a computer. And I think anything that sounds beautiful, something that sounds appealing or has some value to the way it sounds, it gets its quality from that. I don't care how it's made, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. I didn't mean to insinuate that I was...
Yeah, no. I'm just saying personally that for me, it's not what I'm thinking about. I mean, I think some people care about that. Certainly, people that get upset about bands that use production, hide behind production tools to, put out a product that sounds good. Whatever. Like, you can be hated for that. Like, sure, if someone cares, like, if someone cares enough about like how it's being played, then sure, they're allowed to care about that. But personally, I mean, it's just about the product to me.
Would you guys want to do an album with the full orchestra if you guys could, have the means?
God, yeah, that would be amazing.
And again, it just comes down to the sound. Like, I wouldn't want to do that just because I feel embarrassed by using electronic instruments. It's just like, it would actually sound way better. So.
Yeah, it would sound way better, and that would be awesome. I think about that every time I listen to Mondo Kane.
Oh yeah,
the Mike Patton solo album. Like, I listened to that with Myles recently, and we were just talking about like how awesome it would be to have that kind of live instrumentation at your disposal for writing this thing.
You guys know Drew Borgir, right? The black metal band. They recorded some of their albums with the, I think, Prague Philharmonic Orchestra, and in fact, they have a performance, a live show where they did with a full choir and a full orchestra, and it's really incredible.
Wow,
that's awesome.
Yeah, they've been they've recorded it for a live DVD, and they've been meaning to put it out, but they didn't put out the DVD, but the footage of the show is available if you know where to look, and it's just really incredible.
Even more recently, we had in the progressive metal genre, we had Earthside. They released by the way, I suggest you listen to it. It's really good, and it has a lot of overlap with your album. And they released one of those singles with the John Witherspoon from Seven Dust, and they also put him on top of a live orchestra, and it came out just amazing. The full sound is something you can't beat.
It goes back to, I think, like Symphony and Metallica. I think that album was a revelation for metal. We talked about stuff that creates ripples, where you could put together a metal band and put an orchestra on top of it, even if they're not really playing orchestral music. It just works really well.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what else could we talk about?
We can go back to fantasy.
Oh, sure.
It's on our list.
Yeah, actually, yeah. You should, we have a list. You guys should be scared. Yeah, so it is a good point that Eden brings up on the list. He put down, why is metal so influenced by fantasy, and you can expound upon that question, Eden. But
yeah, definitely. I think that fantasy plays into a lot of other music, maybe music that is not mainstream anymore. Classical music always dealt with the fantastical, with whether it was opera or other stuff in that sense. But metal is maybe the most modern style to deal with fantasy. So, do you guys have any insight? Why metal? Is there something that is, and I'm hinting towards my own opinion here, that is the same or in common between metal and fantasy?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, there's also the similarities between metal and classical music too, where we draw a lot of influences from that. Like you said, there was fantasy in that, and but yeah, also I mean we're all nerds. We just kind of like we tend to like these things. There's definitely something in common between them, I would say, whether
it
it's
might be
explicit or not.
It might be the extremity of the two things. Like obviously metal gets to a very high dynamic point, and fantasy also gets to very extreme points at their climaxes. It's a very dynamic, diverse, extreme.
So I don't want to get. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's all I had to say.
So I don't want to get too philosophy major nerd here, but I mean I saw it on your album as well. This whole notion of someone creating a world, and I think that both fantasy and metal have this
escapism.
It's not escapism. It goes even deeper to that. Or will to power, like the will to affect the world around you, and a frustration with not being able to do so. That's basically magic, right? Being able to say the words and make the motions and then create things that are not there. So I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. This is stuff I think about all the time. Does that connect with you? Is that something you think about, like this frustration or desire to affect the world around you, maybe with your music or with other means?
It's not something that I've personally been consciously affected by, but I mean, it's sort of people who are into this sort of music and things like fantasy are all generally the kind of people who are they're very interested in details and technical things, and they are oftentimes called nerds for that, and oftentimes they aren't the most popular people. So they want to find worlds that are not like their worlds and that they can sort of escape into.
Well, yeah, we've all felt like
have more control over and sort of have a second universe that they can sort of dive into.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
because they're not super popular in the real universe.
We've all felt that way at some point in our lives.
Yeah.
Of course, and that's the kind of like relatable idea that we wanted to incorporate in this story. We create a fantastical world, but then tell a story that's based around something in real life. Something that we can relate to.
I feel like, and this is a point that Eden made. But since metal and so metal inherits from fantasy literature and fantasy media in general. I feel like it also inherits some of the tropes of the media that it uses. Like the communities are kind of similar in a way to metal is generally a more male dominated and kind of very exclusive feeling community, right? And I feel like the sensation comes along with that too, because as you said, it's kind of a nerd thing, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree that both communities are undergoing a very big change right now.
Oh, yeah.
The metal community and the fantasy community don't look anything like they did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And I think it was much more of a boys' club, and not only in the gender sense, but also in the gatekeeper sense of who is true and who is false. So, and I think that, I mean, going back to what Myles talked about, the thought that came to my head is the same person who can obsess over the Elven alphabet is the same person who will obsess over what meter a band played this song in and what are the transitions and what are the notes and stuff like that. So maybe that's where we should look for the ties.
Yeah, I would agree, definitely.
Do you guys feel like the exclusiveness of the metal community, exclusive in the negative sense, has ever been had a negative impact on you?
On me personally, I really wouldn't say that it has. I mean, I've been lucky, and everyone I've ever really had an experience with working with in this community or being around has been awesome. I've been working with my friends for the most part for my entire life, so I've been lucky. But yeah, that's an aspect of it that really does bother me. I think that there's a lot of work to be done to improve still. But yeah, I mean, times have definitely changed for sure since 10 years ago, like Eden was saying.
Yeah, and I feel like social media again has kind of contributed to that as well. Bringing issues to light, and also letting people come together easier, because if a band exists that has a very niche sound, then they can't really maybe find fans within their local scene, but throughout the internet they can find people who are into them, and then that can give them the strength to become a full-fledged band.
Yeah, and I mean, Myles and I grew up in this small town where there was very little music happening. It was a small town in North Carolina that was a community centered around retirement and golf. So really exciting to grow up in. It was a nice place, but just I had to drive over an hour to get cello lessons every week. That was the closest teacher that I could get. And so we definitely were very influenced by the internet and finding these, because we had to travel to see perform. I mean, we would see BT Bam whenever they came through North Carolina, which they always did, which was awesome. But we didn't have this kind of direct influence outside of the internet. It definitely was what caused us to become a part of this community and get into that.
Do you feel like it also has influenced you as a musician?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. We wouldn't have discovered that music without it, I would say.
And
I really wanna jump in with an anecdote that will make you guys happy. I've been saving it for like the end because it's near the end. So I hang around with a lot of music nerds and stuff like that. And Israel is a very problematic place because it's a small place, and we kind of at some point everyone. So when you meet a new person, it becomes this match where you try to give the other person recommendations they don't know. Yeah. And I was back and forthing with this guy over a beer or something. He was a friend of a friend, and we started, drawing the really weird bands that nobody knows. And he started giving an intro. Oh, there's this new American band. You probably never heard of them. They're like Between the Buried and Me, and they have this concept album, and it's very chromatic, and you probably haven't heard of them.
Nice.
And they're called Native Construct. And
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I had no idea who this guy is. I don't have any shared. I mean, I have one friend who knows him, but no musical connections. And I asked him how he heard about the band, and he told me, there's this American blog called Heavy Blog is Heavy.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
So I had the pleasure of telling him, not only do I know the band, I'm also on Heavy Blog is Heavy. So that kind of brings in the whole internet story, gives it like a very real dimension, because it's a lifeline for us here in Israel. And I think that's why it's so important to keep it, a dynamic and I don't want to say safe, because it is safe, but dynamic and progressive and evolving.
Yeah, the same I can relate. I'm from Turkey, and the music scene in Turkey was pretty similar as well, so I could definitely also relate to that. But weirdly, Turkey also has this like very old school metal focused community. The obviously the old guard over time dies out, and the new guard comes in with the more internet. But Turkish music community has always been very focused on like stuff like Manowar, and it's just yeah, but I'm very happy to also be part of Heavy Blogs, and I can get to talk to musicians whose music I saw on YouTube like 3 years ago, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I hope these guys make an album, and then here we are today.
So this was the Noyan Eden get sentimental part of the podcast,
which always kind of happens at the end.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything else you guys want to talk about? Or maybe a message you want to send out to the people, hey, check us out on tour or whatever. Any self-plugs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff coming up between the tour and our own playthrough videos. We're releasing another video soon as well, a bigger one. So, yeah. Check us out on the road with BT Bam, Intronaut, and Enslaved on the Coma Ecliptic 3 tour. Myles, is there anything else to add?
Yeah, we'll be at NAMM in January.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So come find us there. And then the plan after that is to either start focusing on the next record, or if we happen upon any other good touring opportunities, we might hop on one of those first. So we'll see. But definitely stay tuned for all the videos and new music next year.
Yeah.
And
got a lot of stuff in the works now.
I guess, since we always talk about the music we like, any music that you guys would like to plug that you think deserves more recognition?
Carly Rae Jepsen.
No, her new album is sick. Honestly.
I guess that's it. Unless Rob, you want to also throw
That's
in
it.
like Taylor Swift or something.
No, actually, I haven't really been as into her lately. CRJ is my girl right now, I guess. Max is all about Katy Perry always. So I'll sit with CRJ. Yeah.
Okay, this podcast goes out to Carly Rae Jepsen. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much
Thanks,
for
guys.
having
Thanks so
us.
much.
Thanks for having us.
Sure thing. Bye, guys.
Bye.